Hello. Is this on? It's on. Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for coming out on a Sunday afternoon, a beautiful Sunday afternoon, I might add. And thank you for inviting us here, Teresa, to share some of our experiences and a very important story with regards to the relationship in an overall sense between museums, museum collections, and the people of origin to whom things often belong when you go through a museum. So we wanted to share that more specifically with regards to a gentleman. Do you want to show Francis Flesche? I'm going to get right into it. Oh, excuse me, this with me is my colleague, Michael Berger, this is the curatorial team from the Nebraska Indian Community College. Michael Berger, and of course myself. Vanessa Hamilton, I freeze up, and Lonnie Samquam Moran, and Zeke Brummels. We're always so informal here, and you'll have to forgive me and get down to business here. But this is the curatorial team that worked on this really important collection and some of the photos that we'll show you. And I'm going to go through it very quickly and really compress the time here, since we do want to leave some time for you to ask any questions or if you need clarification. So it started like this. Everything has a beginning. 2017, there came across my computer and my email a really curious email from somebody I didn't know, and it was asking for information on some historical objects that this museum would need information on. When you work in history and you work with culture and tradition of your own nation, you get a lot of people contacting you for one reason or another, and then if they find out they have to pay for something, then they don't want to do it. So I thought, well, and then I saw everyone else that it went to, and there's a whole list. And a number of them were tribal. And I thought, well, this is not my field. I don't do and work with museums. I'm not a curator. I do none of that. It's not me. And this is in November of 2017. When I saw the same message in December, I thought, somebody out of this big, huge, illustrious list should answer this lady. Maybe it is legitimate. She doesn't just want, information that may or may not go anywhere. Well, one of them will answer, so I didn't pay attention, probably deleted it. And then January 2018, there was the same message. And this time it's begging. Please, can somebody please respond? Again, it's like, that's not me. I hope one of you guys, show some politeness here and courtesy. Let's answer this. Somebody should answer this lady. When I saw it again in February, I thought, oh my goodness. November, December, January, February. She is persistent and nobody's answering her. So out of courtesy, I responded, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. And I have enjoyed it immensely, and once I understood what it was that she was wanting help from the Omaha people, then it became very, very interesting to me. And she wanted to create a formal relationship with either the Omaha Tribe, which is a government, but preference for an institution. NICC is an institution of higher learning. So I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe, I'll probably hand it off to somebody once I let the president know, and we'll go from there. But again, it's not me. I'll just carry the message. She actually came and met with us, and we set up a meeting with the senior citizens to come and see about what she possessed and what she had. So as you walk in here, Mike is the one that takes care of all of recording and making sure that things happen and happen in a timely way. But he got a small grant, and we produced a lot of the photos that she brought that we wanted to use to introduce to the Omaha people. So that was the first contact between community, NICC, and the Berlin Museum. And actually, the Berlin Museum is overseen by this huge, worldwide known museum called the Humboldt Forum. And they have like a number of museums under their administration. And we ended up working with two, the Dahlem and the Berlin. Berlin was the ethnological museum, which these were housed in. And the Humboldt Forum, of course, oversees all of this. Well, it's all very confusing to me, to say the least. But once we sort of got it straightened out, and she came and she showed us, so Mike found some money, and we reproduced those items, and he's going to talk about those in a minute to show you. But what we did initially, there were two showings of what we have at the Humboldt Forum. In the Humboldt Forum, there was a lot of controversy over lots of renovation of an old palace, the Imperial Palace, and they were spending millions and millions to renovate it for this big, huge museum and all the works that are housed there. And ours was slated to be shown. The interesting thing about all of this is none of this had ever been seen. So what is it? You know, what are these photos? And what it was Francis Flesche had been contacted by his colleague, Alice Fletcher, who had gone on to a trip. She'd been in Europe, and she met Alexander Humboldt, and what was that director's name? We'll remember later. And, okay, they asked her if she knew of anybody that would be willing to share items to be shown in the museum. So she was very excited about it. She came back, she told Francis LaFlesche. And so he set about, this is probably about 1896. And so he set about working on it. By this time, they were both working for the Smithsonian as well. So Francis went into the community, and he gathered a number of what we now refer to as cultural belongings. These, you would refer to them as artifacts here in America, items, what else do we call them here? Items, artifacts, materials, yeah. However, and this is a really cool story, and I'll let these others kind of develop it as we go along, but what we finally came up is, because it sounds so, it just sounds so cold and distant, and as if there's no relationship between the people of origin and their cultural items and cultural belongings that are now residing in museums worldwide. So we've come up with the term called cultural belongings, and this is what we prefer, and it's a little awkward perhaps, but once you get into it, you begin to feel this relationship with whatever is in any museum. So this was one of the things that came out of it. But we did a lot of work, and what we found, and we're going to show you through here, is that Francis went into the Omaha Nation, and he gathered about 65 items, cultural belongings. I'm still doing it. He gathered them. He had to go into the people, and he had to ask the people if they had something they'd either want to give or if he could buy it. In a lot of instances, many of the things that he focused on were no longer either being used or being made. Those that he insisted upon, then the tribal people who knew how to make these things would make it for him, and then he would buy those materials from them. So he made his collection of these 65 cultural belongings, and this became boxed up. There was nothing about preservation or conservation of cultural belongings back in those days. He boxed everything up, packed it, he created a catalog, which you can see when Mike talks about this part of our journey, and explained what each of these cultural belongings was. So this box, big wooden box, big crate, went over to Berlin in 1898 and sat there until 2022. 22? Yeah. Survived World War. In the meantime, though, apparently the Russians did find something, and they took 3 items. So we are now down to 62. But his original listing and his original cataloging, of course, reflects 65 cultural belongings. So this is all the story that had to unfold as the curators on this side of the Atlantic for these cultural items. So it was a real honor to be asked to head this up. Why was I asked? I teach Omaha Tribal History. I teach Culture and Tradition. I teach Law and Policy. I teach Native American History. Those are my courses. I'm not a museum person by training, except to maybe go visit one if I'm interested. And so when the president of the Nebraska Indian Community College asked me if I'd like to do this, I jumped at the chance. Know this, I know nothing of museums. I didn't know what I was getting into, but it sounded so interesting, and I'll tell you why. Because I teach in one of my classes, Omaha Tribal History, I teach from Francis Flesche. And so I knew of his works, I knew of the photos, I knew of pretty much some of his family, not major details. So it seemed like, yeah, I think I can do this, but I don't want to do this alone. I think this is a huge, huge undertaking. And finally, when we understood the connection of the photos, that all these photos were in that big crate. And they were preserved and stored in very dangerous type of chemicals that, of course, would have to be in museum ways. They have to bring them out, they have to air them out, they have to make sure that there's no more poisonous residue just to the touch. So this is what they wanted to know, is if they should begin to take them out, if we would be interested in exhibiting the collected works of Francis Flesche. Francis Flesche, of course, when you think about what he did, was to go out into the community, gather these materials, or if they're available, then to buy them. It was not an easy task, but you don't think about things like that until we get to the second exhibit called Omaha 2.0. And these colleagues here were in charge of that collection. They found out firsthand, up close and personal, I'll let them tell their story, how difficult it was in reality for these cultural belongings to be gathered from within the community. So in a way, they went right through the same path that Francis Flesche obviously and apparently must have gone through himself. So we've got a really good story for you, and again, I have the privilege of heading our curatorial team because I teach from the 2 books. Now the 2 books that you've probably seen them, it has a little round fat Omaha boy on the cover, if you've seen that, and then you see the man, and he's looking very disheveled, and he's got this striped blanket, and these are the Bodmer collections. Well, those books actually originated from the 27th Annual Bureau of American Ethnology way back in 1905 or 1911, that he and Alice Flesche had put together, and it's all about the culture and the traditions of the Omaha people. So because I taught from those, there are 2 volumes now, but because I taught from that report, I had the privilege then of heading up our team. So Mike and Vanessa and Lonnie and Zeke, Vanessa was there from the beginning, and Lonnie and Zeke were the new additions, and Mike stayed home and kept the fires warm, so to speak, and so we went for 2.0. But it's been an interesting journey, and not enough is known about it, and I'll tell you how I know that, because we didn't know about it. I taught from Francis Flesche. I read some of his letters and his work papers in being able to teach a class of any, depth, but I didn't come across any of his correspondence that talked about his duties as hired by the Smithsonian to make this collection on behalf of the Berlin Museum. And then, of course, it was transactional. Everything he collected was then sold to Berlin. So they own these materials. It belongs to them, just like the Joslin owns every single Bodmer watercolor. Well, the Berlin owns everything that Francis Flesche had collected. So I'm going to stop there and ask who would like to go next in this story. Oh, Francis Flesche, maybe we can show a couple of other things, and just very quickly, maybe show our colleagues. This is a photo that's big, huge, and it's also in the exhibit in this controversial museum. They spent millions and millions of dollars to renovate this old palace so that there were 22 nations that were represented in this big, huge, grand opening. So these two gentlemen here, Dr. Dorgalo and Dr. Koch, are the head guys. These two guys report to the Minister of Art, Culture and Art. Yeah, what was her name? I forgot to. But these two, and so they were overseeing this. These are the ones that approve everything, and they are, they represent German culture and art and anything important that happens in terms of what, with museums and the collection, as well as the Humboldt Forum and the other museums, Dahlem, Ethnology, Asian Art. Okay, City of Berlin Museum. Yeah, so these are the two important guys. You can see that in our first trip in November of 22, we gave them as a gift for thank you and recognition 2 star quilts. So Dr. Dorgalo and Mr. Koch. Here's part of the original curatorial team. These are 2 students on either side. I don't know, is that me? Might be. This is our first contact with these materials, with these cultural belongings. This is after they've been aired out for a good long time, but they still encourage us to gown up and to mask up and glove up before we could go in and even examine them. So you got a couple of photos. So, okay, so there is the lady in the middle. I don't know, I can't really see. Oh, Elizabeth. She was the lady that came and who had written that original email and who was so persistent and kept sending email after email after email after 4 months. After 4 months, I'd have thought, oh, they're not interested, I'm not going to bother them. But she persisted, and it's a good thing she did. And so on either side, of course, we've got 2 other representatives from the museum itself. And then on the other side, I think we've got, who's that? Is that our students?
Far left is Barbara.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Education specialist.
Oh, yes, yes. She's the educational curator. They do, it's really interesting how they do their programs, is that they have a whole education department devoted to reaching out to the public schools in Berlin and develop whole classes for students. And it's anywhere from young kids all the way up to seniors. And so teachers then know about the various programs. If they feel that their students can benefit from an in-depth course on any exhibit, then they book that with the education department, and then the education department brings in a teacher or someone who's well-versed in the topic, who then presents the course. So that's Dr. Barbara Lenz, Anka, can't remember her last name, and then Elizabeth, and then the other 2 people on the end, I guess. I can't tell who they are. Anyway, what you see here is the meeting of the first time between the Omaha, the people of origin, and the belongings that Francis Flesche had collected. So what we're looking at, I think, are leggings. I don't know what the beaded thing is on the top. I'd have to see it more clearly. It's hard to see. And then down here, I think, is a skirt and a top from the time that he was doing this collection. And you would say that these have been worn, and then that's when I lost. Do we have one of the moccasins? The Omahas have a very unique way of creating shoe wear. We use one piece of leather and cut it out in such a pattern that once you sew it up, it fits right on your foot. It's a snug foot. Okay, it's a snug fit. Yes, here it is. There's no other seams. All the seams generally face outward because your feet are your only transportation. You don't want blisters, you don't want bunions, you don't want calluses or any other foot deformities. And so you face all of your seams outward. So you've got a very comfortable shoe to wear. And as I said, it's just one piece of leather, but the pattern's pretty crazy looking, right, when you don't put it together. And again here, okay, when I saw these moccasins, I picked them up. And what hit me, it was a very tearful and emotional meeting. Because here we were as modern day, present Omaha people, meeting up with the belongings of our ancestors. Anybody who collected or contributed to this, I mean, much like Francis Flesche, they're all gone. And we knew that, so it was a very emotional connection with these cultural items. And when I turned over the moccasins and I saw the footprint, that blew me away, and I became very emotional to realize that this moccasin isn't just a model of something. This moccasin was worn by an Omaha. Maybe it was my ancestor. So it was a very emotional, and all the others, I had 2 students, Mike was there with me. Who else did we take? Oh, we took a descendant of the Flesche family, who was also there, and who else? Oh yeah, the two students, the 2 students, myself and Mike, and the representative from the Flesche family. He's not a direct descendant, but he's within that family, and there's a lot of them. So it's not just one family that was represented there as well. So probably, what else do we have? Okay, there's the moccasins. The center ones with the beadwork are not Omaha, those are Cheyenne. So this means that there was either trading going on, or perhaps somebody had visited from the Cheyenne Nation and gave those moccasins as a gift, or maybe it was a trade item. We don't know. But we made the very clear distinction that those fully beaded ones with that particular design, as all nations tend to have a specific design for themselves, these were not Omaha, but they were very beautiful. Vanessa would like to add something.
Okay, I just want to say I'm going to introduce myself in Omaha. So, Omaha Ijaje Wiwitate Mimite. Wahe Ijaje Wiwitate Vanessa Hamilton. Omaha Wa'u Bli. Hunga Wa'u Bli. Ihanktawa Wa'u Bli. What I just told you was my Indian name that my family knows, and those people that I've chosen to let them know who it is. And I've also told you, as we say, our government name. And I told you that I'm an Omaha woman, a Hunga Clan woman, and I'm also Yankton. With that being said, I was involved with the second trip over in 2019, and it was the first time that I had ever flown internationally. And I got over there, and about the third day, I was getting homesick for my grandson, for my husband, my son, and, we had went into, they still had the items back in the Dalem? In the Dalem. And when I first walked in, I've been in museums before, and it always felt like cold, and like there was something kind of like over you or something. But when I walked in there and saw those items, it was like being in your grandparents' house. It was just that feeling. And I thought to myself, okay, these people, they were my ancestors. And then I went and I picked up the pair of moccasins, and I was looking at them. And one of the ladies came over and she looked and she said, well, I noticed you're looking at those moccasins. And I said, yeah. And then she said, well, what can you tell me about them? I said, well, I know they're Omaha. And she said, well, how do you know that? And I said, because I have the very same ones, the one I just showed you guys. I said, I have them in my hotel room. I said, I know how to make them. And she was like, oh. And, you know, we've had that pattern, that way of making them, you know, since we were one big, huge people. And like I said, you know, we went through, looked at things, and of course, you know, we had to gown up, glove up, do the whole thing. And I remember later on, we went to go eat lunch. Well, there was a German man that had done his dissertation on drum groups in North America. He'd actually traveled with different tribes and with their drum groups and sang these things. Well, my Uncle Pierre, which they showed him in one of those there, right here, okay, yeah, that man right there.
In the back left is Reiner.
Yeah, in the back left is Reiner. He's way back there with the glasses on. But my Uncle Pierre had taught Reiner our flag song. And for whatever reason, Reiner all of a sudden started singing flag song in Berlin, Germany, in this lunchroom, you know, with our other relatives sitting there. And, you know, then I felt like I was surrounded by family. You know, I'd seen ancestors' belongings. I'm hearing our flag song. I've got our relatives around me, and I felt better. Like I said, in 2019, they showed us these things, and they asked us, you know, how we were going to group them. You know, we actually started work on the exhibit. So what we did was we went to a board, had all these Post-it notes, and we put down daily life, you know, what the women wore, what the men wore, what was ceremonial, and we started putting all these Post-it notes, and we discussed, okay, this part should go over here, this part should go over here, oh wait, move this one over here, you know. We did all of that. And, you know, they took us around to different places and that, and, you know, we just kind of got to know, you know, more about the belongings. And we did a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zoom calls, Skype calls, you know, because, you know, this is right during pandemic. So we just learned how to do Skype, and then here we are with Zoom, and then here we are with Teams. So, you know, we were constantly scrambling, trying to figure these things out. But, you know, we kept it in mind that, you know, we're going to have this exhibit for all the world to see. And in 2019, we also did what they called the Night of Long Ideas. And so Timiha, my Auntie Wynema here, myself, Mike, Pierre, we were all up in a group. And the former director of the museum stood up. And we had heard about this, but we weren't, you know, didn't have firsthand knowledge or anything of it. Back in 1985, this director had come to Macy, and he wanted to put this exhibit on. But what happened was that council was probably traveling in transition, doing something, and nobody really paid attention to him, and he was trying to get hold of other people. Well, for whatever reason, you know, his quest failed right then. You know, and until 2017, when Elizabeth got hold of Timiha, you know, then things started rolling again. Well, he talked to us, and, you know, he was kind of bitter, and I understand, you know, why he was that way. But I told him, I said, you know, things work according to the way Creator wants them to work. And I said, I'm sorry that it didn't happen in your time, but I said, we're doing this now. And I said, you know, we're doing our best to show, you know, that we have these things from the present, but we are still living them, and we're going to pass those down to the future. And, you know, they went ahead and opened the exhibit in 2022. I wasn't able to go at that time. My sister had passed away. But the rest of the team went, they opened it, and then a few months later, Timiha came to me and asked me and my sister Lonnie here if we would do Omaha 2.0. So as she had already told you, we went to different tribal members to try to get, you know, items for the display to show the contemporary side. Well, just as I'm sure Francis Flesche, you know, hit, people want that money. You know, they're not going to let it go for free. So I went down and I asked my niece down in Omaha, you know, about making a beaded lanyard. And she was like, yeah. I told her, I said, this is going to be on display in Berlin, Germany. And she was like, oh, okay, Auntie. And she said, well, when do you need it by? And I told her, and she was like, okay. And then I had a dance shirt that my grandson had worn in the arena. So I donated that. And then my granddaughter, who's 2 years old, had a little Walthill, a little dance dress that she had worn, so I donated that. Lonnie had a lot of personal items. And what we wanted to stress to them was that we, as wives, mothers, grandmothers, aunties, you know, we're still passing on this way of life to our kids and our grandkids. You know, on the one part on there, you know, we are still here. Yes, we are.
One moment, my apologies.
I was including in before I said that. Yeah, and it became a theme. You know, we didn't want people to just come in there and say, oh, these Omahas, you know, they were here and, oh, now they're gone. No, we're still here. We're still active. There we go. So there's Lonnie, myself, and Timiha. And that was at this last exhibit. So Omaha 2.0 is currently running with the original exhibit now. And I will let Auntie talk about future plans for that one. But like I said, you know, we just wanted to express, you know, that these things were from our past, but that they carried over to the present. Because as you saw, there was that lady's shirt and her skirt for that. And this is the modern day representation of it. And then they had a dance shirt in there. My grandson wears a dance shirt. You know, the moccasins, we still make them the same way we did. So we wanted to emphasize, you know, past, present, future. And I'll let my sister take over on this part.
What I'm supposed to be talking about.
Oh, you collected things.
Oh, as I went about collecting stuff and, well, actually, like Wynema said, I was just a student and kind of got started, was teaching at the college and did, taught a couple, cause originally, I went to teach, automotive. I taught,
I change your oil. Change tires.
I was teaching, I called it powder puff, but then a lot of men were getting interested in it, so I didn't wanna offend them, so I changed it to, you know, I changed it to like, just auto maintenance. And so then, got them involved and so, but as a, but I do a lot of my own traditional stuff, and I did it on for my own self stuff, and learning from my grandmother, moccasin making, beadwork. I'm a bead artist. I've been beading probably for about almost 50 years now. Like I said, about 45 years, sewing. And then as we went around and tried to do the 2.0, I had a lot of people weren't following through with it. So a lot of the stuff that's in 2.0, I had to contribute my own personal items, stuff from my son and that I had to do on my own. And so my family put in stuff, and so there's stuff that's from my mother, from myself, my children. So that is in there, and at first I was kind of hesitant, but now that people from around the world are going to see this, and that my family, is going to see this and witness this, and other people are gonna see this, so I'm very grateful for that. And like they say, that I get to share with what we have, and to show that my people are still here, that we're still thriving, we're still that we're not gone, we're not, how would you say?
Artifacts on the shelf.
Yes,
Artifacts on the shelf.
I might be dusty, I might be dusty and kind of crusty. And so, but we're still here, and so that's how I got involved with the program, and I really enjoyed it. And so I was really grateful for that, and contributed to that. That way, when my son goes and grows up, and he's 11 now, that he can see that and be proud of me for my artistic skills, and say, you know, this is, that he can say that his mama created this, and we did very, what do you call it, multi-generational artwork together.
Maybe just show some of the exhibit. We'll look at Omaha, the Flesche very quickly, the first one, and then, we can probably switch to Omaha 2.0. But, would you say that they didn't show all the items once again? And this we learned is that when you conserve items from the past, you have to be very careful, because they're very fragile. And so light and differing temperatures can definitely be really destructive. You wouldn't think so, but they can be. So.
Move the microphone.
Switch the
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, we do?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right. I have to- my niece, I really have to thank her for coming out here, or because she's not feeling well, but she decided she'd come out, and she doesn't have COVID or anything like that, she just wasn't feeling good, so, and I thank her for coming. But these are very important. This is an Omaha war shirt, and war shirts, how do I know that? It was because the men would paint a war shirt, this is probably underneath, it's beige or it's tan from just regular tanning, but if it's a war shirt, it's painted blue or green. And this is a war shirt that Flesche probably, from looking at it, it was probably worn, so it was either donated or he purchased it. We do have a list of that as well. But this was that, part of that connection. Behind that, you can see the little dress and the leggings and things that, the little dress here was donated. Was that your donation? That's her donation. So you see Omaha 2.0 right along with the original collection. Oh yes, and the white shirt that's hanging there is her grandson when he began to dance and got into the dance arena. You know, we have a powwow. We call it that. That's what you guys call it. Our word for it's a lot different. But we've been dancing, we don't even know how long. And then in the spring, you're going to start hearing, you know, the ones that, the oldest powwow in America. Well, you know, historically, you know, we have to differ from that. Because the Omahas, I mean, have been dancing longer than those who are claiming to be the oldest powwow, weren't even in this area yet. So our traditions then, as Lonnie here said, go back a long way. But what you see here as well are some of the very same photos that entered into the 27th annual report. This 27th annual report came after the sale of these our cultural belongings to Berlin. And my feeling on this is that this collection in Berlin is it's the original. Because since then, Francis also became a collector. He collected on behalf of the Smithsonian, and he contributed to a bunch of other museums. And they're huge collections. He didn't just start with Omaha. Well, he started with Omaha, but he didn't stop there. He included as many nations as he could in those collections. So Mike can talk about that because he went out with another colleague who isn't in any of the photos here to see what else he had done at the Phoebe Hearst Museum at UCLA? Berkeley, yeah, at Berkeley. So, and that collection was huge. But some of the same items that he had sold to Berlin were replicated, and also, I don't know if they were sold to Phoebe Hearst either, or whether or not he, I don't know what that transaction was, so this is some research. So he's generated a lot of research for NICC as an educational institution. So I think let's talk a little bit to Mike here. Mike, I'm gonna let you do all that good stuff.
All right, we'd like to thank you all for being here today. My name is Michael Berger. I've had the great pleasure to work for the Nebraska Indian Community College for about 12, at least a dozen years now. I have a background in history, Native American studies, museum work, which is how I got the opportunity to participate in probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever been witness to. The very special thing about this collection is, and this announcement today, so we would like to thank all of our sponsor organizations, starting with our president of our college, our board of directors, the Humboldt Forum, the Berlin Museum of Ethnology, National Endowment for the Humanities, for our special project to bring this special story to the American citizens. Wow. As we looked at the history when Wynema got the call, there's no record of this experience, either in the National Archives or any of the publications of Flesche's work. This is literally a forgotten piece of history that could have stayed in the dark in the archives if it weren't for Ilya Labachinsky, who discovered the work and recommended it for the opening of the North American Cultures Hall in the Humboldt Forum. The Humboldt Forum is the largest cultural project in Europe. As Wynema illustrated earlier, it contains several massive museums. The 664 million euro construction project was considered one of the greatest cultural endeavors in Europe. Working with people from around the globe and preserving culture and history was quite a fantastic experience. My experience was to bring curatorial documentation. I'm not an expert on Native history, Native culture, although I am aware of it. So I was brought in to assist and give technical or any support, logistical, necessary to make this project go. So today, we are very happy to announce that for the first time ever, since Francis Flesche created this work to accompany his commission for the Berlin Museum of Ethnology, the single copy has sat in the dark archives of Berlin. No American researchers have been aware of it. There's no record in our own history here in this country of Francis's work. So now, for the first time, as part of our project here with the Humboldt Forum and the Berlin Museum of Ethnology, Francis Flesche's original catalog that accompanied this work is now available for the first time. This is an absolutely incredible historical treasure. Flesche himself was quite a fantastic ethnologist, highly detailed, very embracive of technology. Flesche not only utilized audio recordings on early Edisons, he also incorporated photographic work with early glass plate negatives, and in detail so much that some of the glass negatives in here have never been seen in color. Flesche hired someone to hand paint these photo negatives. And so not only is this descriptive catalog very unique, so are the photographs contained within it. Flesche is a very technological writer extremely talented, went through law school. The man has a list of accomplishments that is quite impressive, not only as an ethnologist, but also as a literary writer. The work that we would highly recommend if you were interested in finding out more about Francis LaFlesche is his work that was published just after he sent this commission to Berlin. 1900, LaFlesche published The Middle Five, which he was working on composing at the same time as his commission for the Berlin Museum of Ethnology. So, we have something from a period, a work, unknown work, published for the first time. Inside, we have the actual color of the paper from that one-of-a-kind copy. He made one handmade copy, shipped it to Berlin. In the back of the book, each item is photographed, and then you can see a sample of one of the hand-painted colorings here. So not only to describe in detail each object in the catalog, he also included a photograph of that. And of course, trying to communicate complex ethnological information, he tried to be as clear as possible, as they were both communicating in English, which was neither one of their first languages. And so this became available as part of the exhibit, is now available at bookstores across America, and our first pressing is now out. And so we would like to thank all of the elders that participated in examining and putting in suggestions into how we could bring this work back and design it to make it reader-friendly to a modern audience and senior audiences, as his original is a little technical. And so we've added modern photographs of each item, and it's a beautiful work and part of our ongoing National Endowment for the Humanities LaFlesche Digital Initiation Project. So many of these that we are working on are technology table outside, the genealogy of LaFlesche. All these will be incorporated into a class that will serve the future generations to be able to understand LaFlesche as an author, an Omaha, a technological innovator, and so we're very excited and hope get out and share that. We have books over and invite you to have some cookies, explore some books on the forum as well as the Against the Current. And thank you all very much for being here today. And I'm going to pass this back to my Omaha colleagues here to cover what we need to.
Thanks, Mike. The interesting thing about this as well is that when Francis was doing his catalog, if you get a chance to see this book or go through it, there's a tiny little photo here of a collection that he made of a game that was played only by women. And as Mike made the point, I mean, the fact that he even did this, nobody knew. And you really can't find a lot of this. There's a few things, but it concerned, I think that's housed at the Peabody, is it, when he got it? Yeah. So the Plum Pit game was for women only. And he described it, his attention to detail was such that he described it, that in one of my classes, after reading through this, we actually went out and found wild plum pits and cleaned them. I went to Walmart and got some paints, and we painted the plum pits. We got a modern basket, and the way you play it is you put these plum pits with these certain symbols on them of like the moon. And some are just black, some are painted half white on one side and the other is black. But he has the star and the moon, and then one that's completely white, and a couple of others again with the variations of painted on one side only and the other side just left plain. So he described this, and we played it. And there were also other things in there called counters. And we didn't, when we first met them, we didn't know what they were. We couldn't imagine because we didn't know about the game. But we saw the counters, and I gathered those. And I didn't know that it was long blue stem grass. And that grass has joints, and they're probably about this long because they grow like 6 feet. So my class and I, we went out, we found blue stem, we got the grasses, we made the counters, and they go up to 100. And when you play with 4 or 5 women, maybe even more, the person who ends up with the most counters, and there aren't any more in the pile, is the winner of this game. It's just a game of chance. But it was so detailed that they really got into it, and sometimes during class, they'd say, let's play the plum pick game, because they didn't want to go into lecture. So let's play the plum pick game. You know, it's like, well, that's good practice, okay. So, I mean, so this is the kind of thing that this collection has done for us as a people, was to bring that back. And to learn the fact that, you know, the war shirts are painted. They're not just tanned, and left at that, but they're painted blue or they're painted green. So, and there is one war shirt on the reservation now. And when you look at it, it's just the normal tan. But I got curious because I knew about this after the first trip to Berlin and asked the gentleman who owned it, I said, do you mind if I look in the seams? You know, can I get really close to your shirt and look in the seams? And he says, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I found green paint. And I told him, you know what? You have a war shirt. And he said, what? And I said, he said, I do? And I said, yes, this is a war shirt. And of course, it doesn't have any of the decorations on it. So he was, after that, he was just very proud of it. He said, I have a war shirt. And he inherited it from his own, grandfather, and then through his father, and now he has it. And Lord knows whether or not the shirt of his grandfather, if it was brand new, could have been about that time, but we were already in treaty time. So maybe the person who did it was before that. I don't know. We don't know the history of it, but it is a war shirt. So thank you. Do you want to show a few more? Is this Museum Island? Or part of it? Or is that, okay.
One side of the Humboldt.
Okay. Oh yeah, on the back side of the Humboldt. You can see how, well, of course you can't hear, but this is just some of the scenery, and we walked everywhere. Europeans, there are cars, but if you don't need to drive a car, then you either hop on public transportation or you walk. And walk. And walk. And they'll say, and they don't do like blocks. Blocks are huge, so they'll say, oh, if you go down there about 15 minutes and then you make a right, and I'm like, 15 minutes? I gotta watch my clock, my watch. So this is just a little bit different there, but I had a lot of learning to do, and I've learned so much, and I'm really privileged to represent NICC and to do the work that we've done. And for sure, with Francis Flesche, I have so many people to thank that if I start now, we'll still be here till dinner, right? So with that.
I just want to say, I want to thank my Timiha, my auntie Wynema, for her faith in me, for giving me the opportunity to go and witness this and help work on certain things. Our college president, Michael Oltrogi, I want to thank him. Our board of directors, Mike Berger, for getting the grants and making sure that everything runs. And then Zeke was our bag holder, as he called it. This is the last time when we went to Berlin. I got to tell this story. Okay, so I don't know if you guys ever saw that old, that World War I guy. Anyway, he had a friend named Pusher, because that guy's job was to push people into the subway to make them shut the door. Well, anyway, so we got onto the subway one day, and I was spacing off and stuff. This one goes and grabs me, throws me in there, and Timiha was already in there, and there was this group of Middle Arabs, yeah. And so they're mumbling and everything. But anyway, so we got pushed into the cart, and then it took off, and I was like, oh my God, I almost missed the whole thing. But anyway, she made sure that we got in there, so that's why I started calling her Pusher. But the Arab guys were like, they were really going off about stuff, and I said, yeah, and she said sorry, and they kept going, and I said, she said sorry. And Middle Eastern men are not real happy with women talking. They kind of looked at me like, but it was crazy over there. We had a lot of fun. I'll let Lonnie tell her.
It's a lot of fun to fall into a bunch of Arab men, right? Oh my God, they act like I did it purposely. Boom. Sorry.
Yeah, Zeke was actually pushing, Vanessa was in the doorway, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't lose the, and so I was just like, Wynema, go, and I just shoved her in, and Vanessa standing, I grabbed her by the middle of her shirt and just jerked her in there, and I'm like hanging on to both these, I was like, I cannot lose these ones, because I'm gonna get in trouble, and then it was just like, oh my God, it was just hilarious. I was like, oh no.
But I still feel I took the brunt, because I had to go, all those Arab men doing that. See my face. Yes, it's a very impact subway, but me too, I need to do my thanks, and most especially for here, for the board of directors that work with Teresa, and for Teresa for reaching out and inviting us to come for this Sunday afternoon. We're more than happy to, go anywhere that people want to hear about our adventures and to spread the word of this, this remarkable man here, because he is Omaha. Now, his sisters, the Cott Center, if any of you have heard about that, they're his half-sisters. His father was married twice, and the first one was where Susan Piquant, Suzette LaFlesche of Standing Bear fame, those are his half-sisters, and they're all older than him. So Suzette, Rosalie, Susan, Rosalie, Marguerite, those were his older half-siblings from his stepmother's side. Frances himself is the oldest of the Omaha woman. Frances had a younger brother by the name of Carey, and Carey, all of these people, and the gentleman you saw here, those are descendants from Carey, and there's a lot of other descendants by different names, Blackbirds, Turners, gosh, I can't remember, but there's other families that are also descendants, but Francis himself did not have children. He was married twice, and neither of them were successful marriages, and so there were no children. But his work lives on, so if you want to look at that as a child, it's very, very successful. So I want to thank him historically for doing this work and for thinking. Maybe he didn't think about it, maybe it was just a job to him, but I don't think so. The detail and the way he collected things, I think he did. It was a time of transition, going from old life to trying to settle into a whole new direction, that he lovingly did it. And because of that, his collection continues to live on. Future plans. We are discussing. Nothing is firm until it gets firmed up, but we are discussing ways in which we might be able to get a long-term loan for some of these items. Some of the items won't be able to make it because they're too fragile, but those that we can bring back, we want to bring back for our community. We're not sure yet where it'll go for the long-term loan, but all of these are things that are in the future for us. So we had this great big opening here in Berlin, 2 of them, and we're going to be planning perhaps a 3rd one. And if you'll remember the 2 gentlemen at the top, this is also their dream. They want this reconnection with the community of origin as well. So that would mean that it would be the Omaha people who would be able to have access, or at least be able to visit the collection as it may return. Again, everything is still iffy. There's all kinds of things going on right now. Money, yeah, well, that's where we're looking to Mike, can we get a grant? So that's all in the works. And of course, we'll continue on with our curatorial team from NICC to continue to be involved in the future plans. But I also want to thank you, Mike. I want to thank you here, niece. And actually, this is my little auntie. And so she's not feeling very well, but I asked her to come, and she's here despite not feeling well. So I thank you, Auntie. And then Zeke, of course, is the other. He's sort of the bookend here.
propping us up, making sure things happen, making sure the technology works, and that we get our message across when we need to. So there's so, as I said, of course, our college president and our dean even, she's very supportive as well. So much so that I think we're going to be having to develop a course in museum studies. So that's the next other step for the future. But again, thank Teresa here and her board and everybody else who puts up these annual programs. We certainly thank all of you for coming and enjoying. Hopefully we were able to share something with you that is very important to us. So both as a college and as our tribal nation. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions?